This video contains rapidly flashing lights and colors.
Every man wants a Playboy pinball machine in his man cave, right? So they find it, they buy it, they stick it in their man cave, they keep it about 6 months and go, this game really sucks.
On December 9th, 2021, Sam Gonzalez, AT Gonzalez, Saturn PM, and Cloverboy spoke to Rusty Key at the Game Preserve Woodlands workshop for 3 hours. Rusty Key is an arcade and pinball expert with nearly 4 decades of experience. Here are the highlights of their conversation.
My name is Rusty Key. I'm the COO of the Game Preserve affiliates, and we are a family-oriented arcade business. We have 2 locations, one here in the Woodlands, Texas, and then we have another one down in Webster, Texas as well, close to NASA.
I'm Sam Gonzalez from SoftwareAgentsHQ, here talking with Mr. Rusty. He was nice enough to let us come to his facility and check out the games and also film and talk to him. Some of the games you have here are a little hard to find, come across. Like there's a Fix It Felix, and I haven't seen that in a long time. I've only seen it actually at Disney World. They had something called Disney Quest where you could play older arcade games at Orlando, Florida. I was wondering, how do you get some games like that that are pretty niche?
Well, so we are all the owners of the Game Preserve. There's a total of 6 of us, and we are all collectors. So we're always looking for the rare, the unusual, and plus it's the availability of some of the games. Miss Pac-Man, they made 30,000 of them. There's no rarity to there at all. So we're not really, it's cool to have them and people want to play them, but it's not stuff that we really go out and look for. That, it's funny you mentioned Fix It Felix. That wasn't a real game, right? Mm-hmm. So they made the game, they made the movie and the book about, or whatever, however they put the screenplay together. They made that with Fix It Felix, and in order to figure out how the characters moved, they had somebody there make up the game and say, okay, well, let's make the game and see what it would look like, see how it played out. And they kind of did enough to see how the characters. Then the guy thought, well, I'm halfway there, I'll go ahead and finish it. And he finished it. And when he did, he turned around and he took that game and put it into a emulator, a MAME emulator. So that Fix It Felix game is actually an emulator. It's a MAME gun. There's a button underneath the console. You press that and it's got like 300 games on it. And that's a Donkey Kong cabinet. So they actually took a Donkey Kong cabinet and put the Fix It Felix in it. And it's got an LCD screen and all that in it. So it's a newer game. But they do it. And we have it there up front. We got it at, we went to the Texas Pinball Festival up in Dallas and Frisco 2-3 years ago. We've had that for a while now. And one of our owner, Joe Reyna, he's a huge collector. He has 300 games by himself. And he saw it, just fell in love with it like he did and wanted to buy it. So he ended up buying it. What they did was when they created the main game, what they did is they put it in the Donkey Kong cabinet and they created about 10 of them. And they gave them to the voice actors. Oh. And then once that got out there, somebody else managed to get the code, saw what they did, and just recreated it. So there's very few. They're all custom, and there's very few made. If you want one, you can make one. And that's kind of the way it is.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And
probably more history on that one game than you wanted, but there you go.
Oh no, that's what we want. That's great. That's good stuff.
Yeah, but we do have a lot of really odd games. There's one sitting right there that's called Gaplus, Gaplus. That's actually a Galaga, like Galaga 2. We actually have all 3 versions of Galaga here, which is kind of a rare thing because people like Galaga. There's a lot of people love it. They don't realize that they made multiple things of it. And everybody thinks, and I did too until just recently, that Galaga was first and then Galaxian came after. Where actually it's the other way around. Galaxian came out and then they produced Galaga. But we always looking for the rare and unusual, which is kind of cool, but the people that generally come to an arcade, they're not looking for the rare and the unusual. They're looking for that experience they had back when they were growing up. They went to the 7-Eleven with their mom and stole quarters out of their mom's purse so they could play the game, right? And it was Pac-Man, Galaga, Gorf was in there was one that I played back in, it was 81, 82, Gorf was in the 7-Eleven across from the hospital that I worked at. So I'd go over there and play Gorf every chance I had. So, and that's the game I really know, and that's the one I live. So we try to bring the games that were very popular. They had a bunch of them because that's what people want to play and that's what they want to see. And the rare ones are just for us.
Yeah, so it's like a little mix of the two. Like, you get a lot of the ones that people want, and then every now and then you got to sprinkle like one for you guys.
Well, we've got them. We might as well put them out there and play, you know. And the it's really funny too because people come in, they see the place, they go crazy, they love it, they want to come play the video games. They come to play the video games, but then they stay for the pinball because the pinballs are the ones that they really you can play more on. You know, you play a video game. Basically every game is the same, especially if you learn some of the the patterns and stuff. But with pinball, every game is different. The graphics and the gravity and physics, it all affects it different. So every game's different on a pinball. So that's really what we find in people. It's surprising the number of people they realize that. Wow, I really like pinball now.
Yeah, we had just attended the Arcade Expo.
Yep.
And that's where we found out more about the Game Preserve. And the same thing happened to us, but especially our cameraman. Like, he was just kind of tagging along to see what was there. And one of our main favorite games is like fighting games. So that's usually what we're looking for when we go to these kind of events. But he wound up barely playing any fighting games, and he was getting really into the old-fashioned pinball, like the skill ball game. That was his favorite.
Yeah, I was into all the old stuff. So what you say definitely rings true. You get like lured in by the pinball. Well, you get lured in by the arcade games, and then the pinball is what lasts.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really what we see, and that's one of the reasons that we do have such a wide variety. At both of our locations, we have 100 to 125, actually about 125 games now at both locations, with about 30 to 35 of those being pinball machines. And it will always stay in about that ratio because that's what and we have pinball tournaments here. Every Tuesday we have a 3 Strikes pinball tournament. Once a month we have a big, huge monthly pinball tournament. And then we also have the ladies. There's a lady pinball club here in Houston called Bells and Chimes, and they come here once a month to play one of their tournaments here as well.
When you're playing like competitive pinball, it's just high scores, right? Is that the focus, or is there more to it?
No, so there is there's a group out there, IFPA, International Flipper Pinball Association, and the way that works is your tournament has to be sanctioned. In other words, you have to say you're going to do it 30 days ahead of time, and then everybody has to pay $1 because that goes for them to track everything. And then you're actually ranked worldwide, and your ranking becomes based on the type of pinball tournament it was, because there's different ways to play against people, how many people played in it, and the score level of those people that you play against. So if you play in a tournament where there's only 5 or 6 people and you got number 1, your points are going to be here. But if you play in a tournament with 100 people and they're really good players, your points are going to be up here. So it all relates. So some of it is points, or you got to get more points to win, right? But the way the scoring actually works, sometimes it's based on how many people play and all that. And like I said, our Tuesday nights we do 3 strikes, and basically what you do, you'll have 4 people. It'll pick random pinball. So we'll have 20 people sign up, and there will be 5 games played, 4 people at each pinball machine. And then whoever gets the top 2 are safe, but whoever was 3rd and 4th place gets a strike. And then it shuffles them up, and you play again, and 3 strikes, you're out. And then it works all the way down to eventually it runs them out. So, and that's a fun one to play too.
Yeah, so there's definitely different formats for different tournaments. It sounds very similar to some of the fighting game tournaments that we'll watch.
It is, and we use match play, I think, and it's a match play is an online system that we use, and I think a lot of the other style tournaments do the same thing because everything's there. You just go in and tell it the different arenas and it does it for you. It's really a nice system, and it's all free.
And going off of pinball, is there a specific game that's your favorite or a certain style of machine?
That is, and we laugh about that every time we get it because we get to ask all the questions. What's your favorite game? Well, I own 200 games myself, so which my favorite? Boy, that's really tough. Now there's some that I really like playing, and then there's some that I will have forever. The Back to the Future game out there is my game, but I have a DeLorean that goes with it. So I will keep that game, and I really like that game. But there are some games that I really like playing. There's it's actually in our Webster location right now. We have a I'm trying to think of the name of the Dragon show on HBO. They had Game of Thrones. We have a Game of Thrones, and I like the Game of Thrones. It's a great pinball game. It really was well. But I like the older stuff too. All the really old games are my games. I own all the old EM games, but they're super, super hard to maintain and keep going because, well, first of all, they're 40 years old. Most of them were made. The solid state pinball came out in '78, so anything that's older than that's got the old reels. That's a 77 or before. So all those games are really old, and they go back to the 40s. And I have a couple of games that are 1930s and 1940s at my shop and in the warehouse. That, and it's amazing what they did. The stuff that they did is pretty cool. I like the old EM stuff and how inventive they were. So we try to, and that's what we try to do here is we try to give the exposure to all different games, all years, right? So we have games here. The Texan pinball machine back there was made in 1960, and that's our oldest game at this location. And then we have another one in the Webster location. We're more space themed because we're so close to NASA, and we do call it the NASA location. NASA.
May as well.
We have a pinball machine there. It's called Universe. It's an old one. In the back glass, it has a rocket ship in the back glass. And as you hit certain things, the rockets move around. So every time it passes the moon, it counts on something else. Well, that game was made in 1959. So that's really our oldest game, and it's really cool to have that. And we have, so we try to give us experience across all of them. We have very new modern machines. We're thinking about buying another one, but right now, just money's an issue right now because of everything that's happened over the years. So.
When it comes to some of the newer machines, when we were at the expo, they were really focusing on Godzilla and the Star Wars Mandalorian. Do you think you have a favorite, one of the more modern pinball machines from the past few years?
Yeah, there's a couple that I really like. The Guardians of the Galaxy we have out there. I really like that one, but I like it because it's got a good gameplay, but the music is great. I'm used to that 70s and 80s music. That's right up my alley, so I like the music of it, and I enjoy playing that one. I've played one that I really wish we would buy. It's called Hot Wheels. It's a Hot Wheels one. It's got the orange track. Oh, it's so great. I really like that one. And then I played one. We went to the Southern Fried Gaming Expo in Atlanta, Georgia. Earlier this year, we went out there, and I played one that I didn't know they had. It was kind of a custom. They just made a few of them, but it's called Heavy Metal, and it's from the animated movie Heavy Metal. And I love that movie, and I love the music in that one, too. And the gameplay on that one was great, too. I really enjoyed that one as well. So, yeah, and every time the new ones come out, you'll hear some people, oh, this is great. I played one, did y'all play the Led Zeppelin game?
Yeah.
That one sucked.
Thank you.
It was just too big. It was too slow. There was just nothing to shoot at. So, but some people love it. Some people don't. It all depends on your taste. Some people like to shoot the long shots and hit the spinners and watch the spinner go doing, 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 doing. And some people like to hit targets and watch the targets drive. And they're more of accurate targets than just shooting loops and things. So it's personal preference.
I do like objectives in pinball games. I like, shoot this lane, shoot this target.
Yeah.
That's what I look for.
Yeah. And different people, different styles, different ways that, things that they like to play.
For me, I like a little bit of extra, so I like extra flippers. I like multi-ball. I like the stuff that's just more than two. So
Yeah.
when there's like a flipper high up or one thing I think is really interesting is when there's a mini pinball game in a pinball game.
Yes.
And they had that in the Mandalorian and also in the Family Guy pinball machine.
Yep. And that's actually been around for a while. Gottlieb did that early on in a pinball game called Haunted House. And they had a play field underneath that you went down underneath and played underneath. Modern game, The Munsters. The new modern Munsters has a play field underneath that the regular play field that you play. Congo here, I don't know where it's maybe on the floor now because we're working. Yeah, it's got the gorilla in there that bangs the ball when you go down underneath and things.
That's really cool.
Congo, terrible movie, but the pinball's not bad.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing about some of the pinball machines is sometimes it's like the theming that I wouldn't care about, but the game is so good, like you don't mind.
So we tell people all the time, and people are always looking for pinball. What do I do? How do I buy a pinball machine? And so what I tell them, first of all, it's budget. You got to figure out how much you got to spend because you can spend as much as you want. We've got pinballs and machines in here, like the Adams Family in here. That's an $8,000 game. The newer games are $8,000, $9,000. I've got one in my shop right now. It's called Joust, and it's a head-to-head two-player game. And that game is, in the condition that I have it in right now, is between $15,000 and $16,000. So it depends on your budget. Set your budget, decide what you want, then go back and try to find what you want. But there are three things that make a pinball that you can use to kind of set the value of a pinball machine. The first thing is, how well does it work? Because if you got a pinball machine that doesn't work, it's just a 300-pound piece of art. And it really can't do anything in that state, so it's really not worth much until it gets fixed. Fixing it can be a challenge. I have my own repair business, and I charge $50 an hour for me to work on your machine. So it can get pretty expensive if you don't know how to do it yourself. So how well does it work? Does everything move and smooth? You know, you got to make sure it plays well for it to be of a particular value. The second thing is, as you mentioned, is the theme. You know, what's the theme of it? Is it a really cool theme? Some of them were movie themes, some of them weren't. You know, there's different types of games with different themes. And then you have the playability. Some game, just how well does that game play? And a prime example I give everybody is the early 1978, 79 Playboy pinball machine. Every man wants a Playboy pinball machine in his man cave, right? So they find it, they buy it, they stick it in their man cave, they keep it about 6 months and go, this game really sucks. And they end up selling it and moving on and getting something else. But it keeps the value up because of the theme. There are some games that the theme's not scope. We had an EM game back there, and the guys just wore it out. It was at our very first location, so it went through 7-8 years of play, and it was called Honey. And it was actually designed, I think it was Williams, it was actually designed to capture women to play pinball. And they did that on several ones. I actually have two old pinballs called, one of them called Fashion Show. And it was actually ladies in fashion dresses and things. But Honey was the Southern Belle kind of, it had this really pretty faced lady on the things. They're not as risque, you know, it was very Southern dress type thing. But it was a great game. And, you know, all the guys loved it. Everybody wanted that game, and it kept the value up because it was a great game to play. Yeah. But the you know, theme wasn't that great. So it's always a balance between those three. How well does it play, the theme, and you know, the whether or not it works and how well it works.
So if you want to move a lot of these machines to, let's say, the Arcade Expo, you have to hire a trucking company and all that.
Well, we used to rent halls and all that, but this year we bought 18 by 12 foot covered car hauler trailer.
Okay.
So we've got a trailer over by the warehouse. I have this big trailer parked there, and we can use it to move games, and that's exactly what we've done with this. But it's, I mean, each one of these, it's 200 pounds.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
And I've actually dropped one on myself. I was coming down a ramp. I was holding, it was a bigger game than this. It was probably close to 300 pounds, and I was coming down the ramp holding it. I was by myself in my shop, and it had a big control panel that stuck out to the side. As I came down with it, the control panel hit the edge of my garage door, swung it around, threw me and the game off the ramp, and I was probably 3 foot off the ground. I landed on my shoulder and my face, and there's pictures of blood all over the concrete. And I was and the game was sitting on top of me. So when I had to do it, I had to roll the game off it. So I'm sitting there holding it, thinking, I wonder if it's okay. And I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm going to put this thing off here. And shoved it off and let it fall down. But actually, believe it or not, it still worked. It's a crappy game, too, called Deer Hunter. It was a shooting game called Deer Hunter, early Deer Hunter, and it was a terrible game. And it almost killed me. So what we're looking at here is obviously Star Rider from Williams. This is a rather unique cabinet, unique game. It actually looks like the motorcycle that's in the game itself. Super rare game. Disc Scan was Williams' name for their Laserdisc system. It's the only Laserdisc game that Williams made. This was kind of at the end of their foray. They were just trying anything to try to stay alive and do things. But what's really interesting about this game, one of our owners, Ken Graham, worked for Williams back in the day. And he actually worked on several different games. And he worked on components of games. You know, they had different programmers did different things. And one of Ken's jobs was to create these test patterns and stuff. You know, when a game boots up, you see like a rug screen and you see the different things. Well, that's the stuff Ken wrote, right? And I knew Ken had worked at Williams, but I really didn't know. And I knew he had worked on Mystic Marathon and a couple of other games, but we didn't know this one. And he came in and Joe Reyna found this game, brought it in. He bought it somewhere and brought it in. It's huge. Nobody wants. So anyway, so we brought it in. It has a laser disc, but the laser disc was bad. So we brought the Dexter board. We put the Dexter board in there, got it connected up to where we thought it could run. So it was me and Joe and Ken. We were all in here ready to work on this machine and get it going. And it's a motorcycle game. It's got the handlebars, and I've got a bike, and I like the bike. And so Joe comes in, and he says, all right, we got it all plugged in. We had it all put together because the motorcycle wasn't on it. We had to put all those pieces. So we finally get it all to pieces, and now I'm mounted up. I'm on the bike. I got my handlebars, and I'm ready to go. I said, let's turn this on. I want to ride. Let's go. So we turned it on, and of course the game booted up. And as the game was booting up, Ken was standing behind me as I'm sitting on the motorcycle waiting to play it. Ken's standing behind me, and as it comes up, it's showing the test screen, this piece and then this and then the graphic test and things. Ken's standing behind me, and as it's booting up, Ken's going, I wrote that. I wrote that too. That's the piece I wrote. And I was like, wow, that's just, so what's it feel like 35 years after you wrote a piece of code, now you're seeing it come up and run into something like that. And he goes, that's pretty cool. It's pretty neat to be able to see that. So Ken's the experience he had at Williams was really cool. He did some neat stuff, and he has a great outlook on Williams and what they were doing at the time, and he, you know, a perspective of inside Williams, what was going on at the time. Because when you see, because he worked on Mystic Marathon, and this one he didn't have his initials on because they wouldn't let him. A lot of games now, at the end of the game, you see credits. Who's the programmer, who's the writer? They wouldn't let him do that because it was so competitive. People were stealing programmers, and they were going back and forth. They wanted to know who they were. So if you look at Mystic Marathon, their names aren't on there. But just about all games have a default high score. Those initials in the high scores, there's a KAG in there. That's Ken A. Graham. Mm-hmm. So Ken's name is in the high score. That if you erase all the scores and start over again, some of the default scores, one of them's Ken's. Mm-hmm. And that's where they let them put their initials and kind of mark the game as to there's something that they worked on so they can show later. But this game is really cool. It's really a huge challenge. We're really hope to get, it's one of those where we hope to get working soon because this is really a cool game to have.
What was the main issue of this one that you're still tackling?
So the way this game works, it's a laser disc that shows video of planets, and then the computer kind of sees what's on screen, then overlays a track, and then overlays motorcycles, and it overlays bullets and things as you're shooting, and comets going by and things that'll knock you off the track. So the computer has to be tied in. The computer wasn't smart enough and the laser wasn't smooth enough for the two things to be in sync, right? So the computer, there are images that it's looking for in order to keep the game in sync. Well, and I can show you on the back of the board, their boards are right here visible. On the back of the board, there's probably like 15 potentiometers, little adjustments that all adjust on different things. So once you get it running, you have to adjust and tinker around with that thing until it locks on, until it sees it. And sometimes it would lock on and then it wouldn't, then it would, because the Dexter board operates differently, a little bit differently from the original Laserdisc board. It has some trouble syncing up, and you got to get the colors right and everything. So that's where the challenge is. There is a gentleman that does have one of these working on a Dexter board, but he said it's hit and miss at best, and so it's one of those. So not only once we get it working, we got a challenge of getting it working. The next challenge is to make it smooth enough that it can go on the floor and people just don't complain about it. Because you don't want to put something on the board, people go, oh, this game, terrible game, doesn't play right. How come they don't fix it? Yeah.
It always looks more authentic when you see the insides.
So this board actually is supposed to swivel down, but there's the thing. And I'll get my flashlight on so we can see a little bit. There, and you see these little devices. Those are potentiometers. Each one of those, you put a little screwdriver in there and adjust. So all of these over here, each one of those are all video adjustments that you have to make and timing adjustments that have to be tweaked and turned so that the laser disc, which is here, inputs here, this comes into these boards, into one of these boards, and then they have to be in sync in order. This is the cable. Well, this one here goes to the video. There it is. That goes to the video. This takes the input of the video board, gets it ready to go to an output. This is the computer board, the video from the computer, that's then, of course, tries to sync in order to output through the red, green, blue light. These here is the red, green, blue ground and sync that goes to the monitor. So those are, and that's the main CPU board over there that's running everything. So yeah, it's complex.
It's
very hardcore.
There's like a video disc already in here.
So this down here is the Dexter board, and this board here was created by a gentleman that actually uses an Arduino, I think, and he uses the Arduino, and he created another board that fits on it that then takes the place of the Laserdisc.
Oh, okay.
So whatever Laserdisc you have, there's a USB, you can plug in USB right here. It's got my initials on it because he formatted it for me, and it saves the image from the Laserdisc in the Laserdisc format. So that when it plays back, as far as the computer, the system knows, he thinks he's talking to the original Laserdisc. So it's emulating the Laserdisc and outputting the images just like it would if the actual Laserdisc was running. These work really well on he's managed to do this mostly to save Dragon's Lair and Space Ace and Dragon's Lair 2 and all those original cartoon style of video games. They all had the same problems. Laserdisc wasn't working. So this was somebody in the community decided they wanted to find a way to save the Laserdisc games.
And when I was at Houston Arcade Expo this year, Brian Cullen, who designer for RAM.
Oh yeah. Know Brian very well.
Okay. He said that the problem with Laserdisc games, the reason why they went by the wayside, they get nudged badly once or twice.
Oh yeah, it throws off the heads, the sync, they're just done. It would move the heads, it would shake them a little bit, they're out of alignment. And that was this thing too, is that you could play it and over time it burns the disc. The disc slowly deteriorates over time because the laser is running on it trying to track, right? So it deteriorates over time, and as it deteriorates, you should be able to go in and adjust these things to get it back in focus and get it back and running again. And then, so that's kind of why, now we're getting into it, but that's kind of why this Dexter is kind of hard to get this one tuned right, because this game was tuned to the original Laserdisc and the wear of that disc that was in there. So the disc that and the laser disc and the laser machine that it was taken off of to get a copy of to put on the Dexter was different. So you've got these two different types of systems, two different inputs, same thing, but they're just a little bit different. It's just enough to screw it up and keep it from working. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but
Good luck.
something fun to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I understand about paddleball, I guess you would call it a patent troll of sorts, because as we've discussed, it's a pretty naked clone of Pong in every sense of the word. From what I've heard, I've never seen it in person. I've seen pictures of it, and it looks nearly identical. But that was their way of getting their foot in the door in the video game industry. Where a lot of people think Defenders were the end for them, but this is really ground zero right here. Right?
Yeah, it really was. Pong came out, and it was, as you said, it was the first video game, and nobody really saw it coming. And then they did, and they even Atari did. I mean, they had no idea, right? And they put it out. They made one or two. They put it out there. They started realizing that people thought this was just great. This was just a really cool thing. So then they started producing it, and we were, the people in the United States, they were picking it up. They were putting them in video games, and they were watching the quarters just drop, and the operators going, "Oh my God, look at all this!" Well, then all the other companies thought the same thing. Wow, I'd like to have a piece of that action. Why can't I just make one? Well, back in, it's so new, they didn't really know. They went in, so they didn't patent how the game worked. There was a patent on how video games would work with the joystick and the coin and things, coin operated games, as much as they could patent, but there was no real patent on how the game board itself worked. And this game, I'm going to move this one where you might be able to see it. This is the game board from, my technician was working on this. This is where he was pulling in power. But this is the actual game board for the paddle ball. If you take this board, put it right next to a Pong board, it would be really difficult to tell them apart. The only difference is they've done a little bit different stuff up here in the power supply, the power section of the machine, of the board, because they found out as the Pongs ran, they were having trouble with certain power issues. Well, so they cleaned up their boards, and everybody else cleaned up their boards. Some of them did it a little bit differently. But you can take all this game is what we call a TTL. They use all TTL chip. It's dedicated logic circuitry. There is no computer. There is no code or anything written in here. It's all done with switches and transistors and turning things on and off and keeping circuits alive and dead, and that's what this thing is. So there's no code thing. So they didn't think about, well, we should patent the way this game particular works, the design of the game. So they didn't patent it. And then next thing you know, everybody's got a Pong. I mean, so this was called paddleball. There was one called soccer. There was one called hockey. There was lots of different games. Some people expanded it, made it a 4-player game. But you can, so when the technician was looking at this, trying to figure out how to fix it, and he's got a couple of chips already trying to get replaced in here. When he was trying to fix it, he went and got the schematics from Pong and some guy had already totally disassembled Pong on the internet and had exactly how it all works, and he's using his documentation to try to get this one to work. And it's exactly the same. There is no difference from that. It is 100% exactly the same and a rip-off of the things. And they were trying to create them so quick. They didn't know how to put a monitor in yet, and they needed sound. Well, this doesn't have sound in it. It makes sounds, but it doesn't actually create. There's no audio board or anything on it. So what they did was inside this screen was a TV screen. It was a Panasonic black and white 13-inch Panasonic screen sitting in there, and they just had that screen sitting there. It has a channel and everything and a tuner. And what they did was they cut the wires from the tuner to the main board of the monitor, and brought in sound and video from that board into the TV. So not only did the TV show the screen, but it also showed the sound was coming through. And you would adjust the sound by adjusting the volume knob on the TV if you wanted to in order to do it. And then it had this little piece. You can tell it's old. So this side of it facing him went to the TV. This side stuck to the machine. So it covered all you could see was the TV screen. You didn't know there was a television screen in there. And all the monitors nowadays have that, what we call a bezel around them. But this was the first rendition of how do we make a bezel? How do we hide all this stuff? And it's just cardboard with freaking electrical tape holding it together. I mean, there was no sophistication. No, they were just getting it out the door. Make it work, get it out the door, put it in a thing, and sell them. And that's exactly what they did on these. But it does have stopped spinners. They don't spin all the way. They'll go one way and stop, and go the other way and stop. Because that's the way Pong works. Pong can't have you go all the way around, because then it gets confused. So it only goes one way or the other, and there's just a pot in here that does it. So anyway, yeah, just like Pong.
Awesome.
Yeah, the problem is that on all these games, these old games, the pins, you can see this is an original pin connector, and these aren't. You see how shiny and pretty these are? Those are the new ones. The old ones, well, he's replaced those, but some of them get crushed down. They're not the right size, and anyway, they're really hard to find. These pins get crushed, and then when they make the connections, they don't make the connection properly, and then they barely make a connection, and then heat builds up, and then it oxidizes, and heat more resistance and more heat, and then eventually it just quits working and things. But yeah, that's your Centipede game board, and it would work on a cocktail or a stand-up game. There's just a dip switch in here that you change the dip switch, and then you can put it in a regular cabinet, so it doesn't matter which one it is. And this one is computer based. It actually has a computer chip on it. I think it's an 80A computer chip running this one. Could be a 6800, but I think it's an 80A. But so there's several different chips that run most of these games, and most of these games, they're running their own little computer system, in there. And it's pretty amazing the technology they were putting, because this is like early 80s, right? And this is technology that was, I started programming when I was in college, and that's what I went to school for. I was an IT guy, and all the way through college, I graduated college in '83, and I was doing it on punch cards.
Oh, wow.
So that's how, so all this technology is really just cutting edge, because that's what they were using now. And even now, when you look at a new pinball machines, they're actually using modular boards and stuff in pinball machines now. Underneath, and all the new ones, they have Ethernet cables.
Oh, yeah.
They're all tied through Ethernet inside the new modern ones. So, yeah, cutting edge technology always plays a part in the video games and the pinball machines, because that's how they keep ahead of the competition.
And now, the conclusion to the Rusty Key interview.
One question I wanted to ask is that machine that is right next to the desk, the one with Street Fighter on. That's an emulator. Where did you get that machine? It's called Jank Machine or something like that?
Yeah, that was the tagline.
Yeah, so what about it? I noticed it, AT showed me the machine, and I immediately said, whoa, what is this? And I got really curious about it, and it felt pretty good to play in. So I kind of was wondering, it feels pretty out of out of the ordinary of what everything else is in here.
So that machine has an interesting history. It's a Japanese cabinet. They I think they call them candy cab. I'm not super familiar with those cabinets. I ended up getting that cabinet myself in a warehouse deal. I bought a whole warehouse of stuff, and I had to take everything that was in there, which was cool because that cabinet was in there, and I knew, and it had the marquee on it, and the game computer in there was Tekken 6. So when I saw that, I had no idea. I mean, I know the old ones, I don't know the new ones, but that was their reaction that I was getting. Yeah, Tekken 6, that's cool.
He's
So
into
we
it.
brought it in, I got it, and when I got it in to my shop, the PC that was in there was on its last legs, but the power supply wasn't working at all. So I bought a new power supply, put it in the PC that was in there, booted it up. It got it to boot up, but it wasn't Tekken 6. It was some other type of fighting game. So somebody had taken it and put a kit in it, modified it, made something else. They just left the Tekken 6 marquee on it. But then that computer started getting worse and worse and worse. So I put it out there on the one of our Houston arcade forums here in the local area, and said, anybody want to buy this cabinet? Because the cabinet's worth $200, just the cabinet itself. And I had a couple of people look at it. One guy came over, said he absolutely wanted it, but he never came and picked it up. He came back, he looked, he said, can you deliver it? And I'm like, no, I've got more things to do. If you want it, $200, come get it. So he didn't come and get it, so it ended up sitting there for a while, and then eventually I was talking to one of my staff members here. Matter of fact, he's the store manager here at this location. His name Ryan, and Ryan was just thought it was like you got, oh, that's just a cool cabinet and things. And we had a couple of old computers sitting around, so he actually, I said, man, if you can make it work, go for it. Just so he had it sitting up front, and he sat there and tinkered with it, brought in the computer, bought in an emulation board that allowed the joysticks to work through the USB ports and stuff on the, and then there's actually multiple fighter games on that machine. So he loaded up a lot of the new fighter games on that and put it out there, and it's been really popular. People really enjoy doing it, and he's got it, and we really do that a lot. We have multiple levels of people who are working for us here. We have senior techs that work back here. They've got a lot of experience, and then we have all the people that we hire, our staff members, and those staff we usually get college age folks that are going to college, because a lot of times they're just sitting around. So they can do their online work. Matter of fact, one of the guys just completed his bachelor's in architectural science from University of Texas, sitting and doing online courses while he was here. Anyway, so we hire those kind of folks, and then they have career paths. You can go down to be a technician, so you learn a little bit more about technician, you become apprentice. And after you become apprentice, then you become you're a floor tech, and then an apprentice, and then the actual tech. So I've got one gentleman here that's at the floor tech level. I've got another gentleman that's at the apprentice level, and the same way with the other side of it, with the management side of it. And Ryan's been with us for 8 years now, so he's now the store manager of this location. He's kind of worked up through that and got things, but he likes games. I mean, you can't work in an arcade and not like games. And when he said he had that, he just got all excited about it. So that's where it came from. Almost every game has a history here. Some of them are just because they were bought in a big box, but some of them were just because we went and found that particular machine. We have a game that somebody won out of a cereal box.
Really?
Yeah, I think we saw the video on that.
Yeah, the
Super
the
Zaxxon.
Super Zaxxon. Yep, won it off of a Quaker cereal box. Yep. So we have,
So those things
some
are
unique
real?
games.
Yeah, you win things out of cereal.
When it comes to like repairing some of the games, what's one that's been like really difficult, or maybe like one that's really difficult but you managed to complete it?
Well, see, now you don't get to ask that question, which one I managed to fix. Because we've got some games that we really, really worked on. We get them like almost there, and then there's just like one thing left that we just can't get done. And most of the really popular games, Centipede, Galaga, Pac-Man, whatever, you can't get your board working or if it looks like that board's too much, you just chunk it and go buy one, because there's somebody out there that's got one in a working machine that you can buy for, if you can buy a board for $150, you're not going to pay your tech 10 hours to work on it, throw it away and buy the thing, right? It just doesn't make sense. Some of the ones we've really tried to work on, some of the pinball machines are really a lot of challenges, because pinball machines have batteries. They actually put batteries on the motherboards to save the high score and the settings and things like that. The problem is that people don't know their boards are there, and they end up just letting them, the batteries are there, and they just let them sit. And just like a flashlight in your kitchen drawer that's been sitting there for 8 months, the corrosion gets in there and it eats up the board, destroys the board, and then you're done. Pinball machines, especially the early 80s and 90s pinball machines, they have their own computer board on board. They're not like you can just go down to Walmart and buy another board and stick it in there. You have to have that particular board. So we spend a lot of time either redoing traces, cleaning them up, taking all the corrosion off, redoing traces and things of this nature in order to make it work. Like there's a Gauntlet Torch, which is it's an Olympic theme game. I actually think it's down at NASA though. It was one that I worked and got it working, and then it quit working. And that particular board has a problem with, every machine has its Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And that board, the problem was there's a tilt, the way the tilt system works is there was a combination of the solid state piece, and they had a big relay, like the old style tilt relays back in the game, and they worked in conjunction together. But there's a chip that you can't get anymore, and there's a process in that board that you just can't fix, and that's where it got to. Luckily, there's a guy that makes a board to completely replace that one. So I worked on it, got it working, had it out there playing, and then it got flaky, and then it just wanted to go in tilt mode all the time. So then we said, all right, we're done. Let's just go buy the board and stick it back in there and make it work. So now it's running really nice because it's got the new board. But we definitely try, one of the reasons we call the place the Game Preserve is because we try to preserve the games. We tell people when they come in, you won't see multicade games in here except for maybe Fix It Felix and that fighter game. You won't find those because we are here to preserve the old games. They have the original board set, they have the original monitors, everything's original about it. And that's our objective. We're a playable museum, if you will. So yeah, there's a lot of ones that we challenge. And there's a lot of ones we've tried to fix that we haven't fixed yet. Williams paddleball, as well as we've got a Williams Laserdisc game in there. And I've got another Laserdisc game in there that I mentioned earlier, the Quick Draw game. And it actually runs on a Commodore computer, 500 Amiga computer. And it was running fine, and it was great. People loved it. And then it died, and they're like, "You're going to fix it? When are you going to fix it?" And I'm like, "I wish I could fix it." It's really a challenge to get it fixed. And because they're rare. They're just, not everybody works on them.
I was wondering if there's a certain game that you've been trying to get that might be really rare that you want to add to the Game Preserve, but you haven't gotten it yet, or maybe you almost got it, but there's
a couple actually. First of all, we do not have an original Pong. Now the paddleball is a ripoff of Pong, but we wanted the original Pong. At the NASA location, when y'all go down there, you're going to see it. There's this big long hallway. It's 300 feet long. That you walk down this hallway. We have all local artists painting murals of different games. So we have a Dragon's Lair game, we have a Tron game, we have a Cubert's in there, and we have a big Pong. And the way it works is when you first walk in, you'll see a big number 90 in the font of the 90s. And then eventually, we don't have those done yet, you will see games from the 90s. And then you see a big 80 in a 80s font, and then you see 80s games, and then you see a 70, and you see 70 games, and the last game you see is Pong, and you kind of walk into the screen of Pong, and you go into and then you're into the arcade. So we're kind of a time zone as you go further and further back in time, and then you end up in the arcade. So we want a Pong. We have one of the owners has a Dragon's Lair game. He had a Tron, beautiful Tron, like mint condition Tron in his house that we were eventually, he was storing it there. We had moved it from location to location. But Harvey came through the hurricane and flooded his house, and when it did, it flooded the bottom of the cabinet and trashed the cabinet. So now we have a trashed Tron, which really sucks. I've got an old Tron cabinet. I just pulled it out of here that I had. It was painted blue, and it had Arkanoid in it. You ever played Arkanoid? It's the breakout game,
One
right?
of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a great game. But Arkanoid was not a video game in its own. No. It was a kit. It was always a kit. So everybody just replaced it. Well, somebody put an Arkanoid in a Tron, which is like, that's just blasphemy. Why would you do that? But it was a great game. I liked it, and it was my game. But anyway, so we got the Tron game in, and I was going to take his Tron pieces, put it in there, and get rid of the old water busted cabinet. But unfortunately, when the insurance people came in and the movers came in to help try to get his house cleared out, they just grabbed that Tron and pulled it over, didn't know what it was. The power supply board had fallen out of the bottom, landed on top and crushed all the board set. So the board set is now trashed, and you're $500-600 for a board set. So if you can find one working that somebody's willing to give up. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of games that we want. I've got a warehouse across the street. We've got 300 plus games sitting in it right now that just waiting on money, time, and people to fix.
I did look up two of Ken's lectures from the expos.
Oh, did you?
And he mentioned that Blaster is hard to repair. I wanted to know if you knew about that.
Obviously, it's sitting in here because it's not working, and it is a challenging game to work on. And a lot of the games are. And like I said, some of the games have chips that they made specifically for that game, and so that you would get to So if that chip goes bad, you're done. You can't fix the board because you don't have that chip, and nobody makes that chip, and it's a custom chip. There's an X-Men game out there that if you play it, you notice there's no sound. Well, that's because the sound chip mechanism uses a custom chip that you can't get anymore. So it's not the audio amplifier, it's the sound generation and things and all that. You just can't get it anymore. So now we have a game that plays, and it's on the floor for people to play, but there's just no sound because we can't make it work. So unless we buy a whole nother board. But everybody's got a working board, don't want to sell it. Yeah, and you can buy the whole game for less than what you can buy just the board for, because if they've got the board, they obviously don't want to sell it because they're going to put it in a cabinet and make it work.
So that one is just easier to just buy the whole game.
Yeah, just go and buy the whole game again. Yeah. So we're and people, we get that request a lot. Oh, can you get this game? Oh, go get this game. Oh, you should get this game. And it's like, these games we buy these games because we find them on Craigslist. We go to a warehouse raid. There's just different ways to come across them, and we just can't just go, okay, I want to go buy a Pong. I'll go find one. Well, nobody's selling them. They're just not out there, right? Same way with pinball machines and other things. And of course, the pandemic has really, really hurt us bad money-wise. And so right now we're just cash strapped. So we're making do with what we have. We hope to be adding a new game or two. We still bring in games because we have them in the warehouse. We get them fixed as we can. But again, all it takes is money, right? And till we get the revenue coming back in that we need, it's awful difficult to go and buy new games or to buy the parts to fix it.
I saw there's an interview, I think it was from This Is Houston, that I think they came a few years back and they interviewed you. And they just talked about the Game Preserve in general. And I heard in the interview that you said that it kind of all started with you having too many games, and you were just like, well, what can I do with this? And then you found a few other people with that similar problem. I guess I just wanted to know if you could explain, like, how's that whole process come from just I have too many games to now you have 2 locations, you have a whole warehouse, like the whole evolution. How do you feel about it now that you've invested so much into preserving games? And it's more than just that my game's at my house, so getting too much, it's like a whole brand.
Sure. So I've actually done several interviews and also did a couple of lectures at local community colleges for the business and for the accounting groups, and for entrepreneurs, trying to show them a little bit about where we came from. Really is about your passion. What is the passion that you have? I was an IT guy. I did programming. I moved up to the ranks. I was a project portfolio manager and all these things, and I enjoyed doing that. But when I really started collecting the games and pinballs, it was something that I enjoyed doing. It was really, I had a passion for it. I didn't mind staying up till midnight on nights or later working on a game, trying to make it work. And then I'd make it work, and I just loved watching somebody play it. You know, I didn't necessarily have to get in and play it. So what happened is that people always ask, well, how did you decide to get into this? Well, it was a divorce. I had gotten divorced, and it was either find something to occupy my time or go out and drink and do other things, and I don't do that. I'm not into that. So not one to go to the bars and all the other stuff and hang out. So I ended up finding a pinball machine and started working on it, and then I found a video, and then I got another pinball machine. Then I got, went on. And one of the very first pinball machine I bought is one called Spectra 4. It's made by Valley, which makes pool tables, Valley pool tables. They actually decided, let's make a couple of video games and pinballs, and they made this pinball machine. What's cool about it is it's a cocktail table. It's like this. It sits low, but it's round. And you sit 4 people. Most cocktail tables, you play it like from one end, and that's it. Well, this one's round, and you set chairs all the way around it, 4 chairs around it. And when you play your game, and when you're done, you pull it, and it rotates underneath the glass. So it'll rotate all the way around. So it's a 360-degree. Very rare game. Hardly. When I got the game, I didn't know how rare it was. I thought, oh, look, lights come on, so it must work. Anyway, and the reason I go through that story is because the boards, typical story, had batteries on it, acid ate into the boards. So I ended up needing some help, got out on one of the local boards, said, here, I need some help. And a gentleman named Ken Graham replied back, said, hey, yeah, I think I can help you on that. And so I said, okay, well, where are you at? And then he gave me his address, and I'm like, well, hell, you're right down the street. He goes, yeah, I know. Well, okay, cool. So anyway, I set the board, we got it back and forth, and we got it working. Well, he got the board to where it would function and come on. The problem is that board, since it was really a weird machine, and each board set was a little different. One board has 3 chips that had the program ROMs. Another board had 2, and another one had 1. And each one of them had different CPUs and different tracings and all of this. I had a 3-chip set, and all I had was 2 of the ROM chips. So, and they weren't complete. They were messed up. There is a business there's a group out there called PinMain, where they actually do like names on video games, but they do for pinball machines, so you can play them online and things. So you can play them, not online, but on your PC. So I took that ROM chip and I sent it to their main programmer, the guy that does most of the PinMain stuff, and he's in Germany. So I mailed my chip set off to him. He read the chips in, got the binary files. He turned around, picked through it, figured out what was going on, and got it to where it would he could at least see how the code works, and he decompiled it into machine code. He then, for that 6800 chip, he then sent me the machine code, and as a programmer, I went back and through and documented every line, decoded, debugged, figured out what was missing, and fixed it. Sent it back to him and said, make these changes, and then you can get this and recompile it. And he did. He recompiled it, sent it back, and then away we went, and my game worked. I won most original machine with it at the Texas Pinball Festival, because I had one of 2 games working at the time. And the other guy got his working because of my chipset that we made. So now there's like 15 of them running around the world. They all came from that. But anyway, the reason I go through that story is because Ken helped me on that. Fast forward a year or so, we go to the Arcade Expo, and I'm already collecting. I've got 10 or 15 games, and everybody does too. And the Arcade Expo happens every year. Everybody brings their games. You get in free if you bring a game. And you bring in 2 games, you get 2 people in free. So some people just bring in a whole bunch of games, and which is great. It's a lot of fun. We have a great time. And the Arcade Expo here in Houston is a party. Loud music, lots of stuff. Oh, it's great. It's just a party. It's not the serious pinball expo, or things like that. But anyway, it's a great time. So, but every time somebody did it, just like us, after that expo, I heard everybody talking about it. Everybody plugging all their machines in and trying to get them to work and go on the things. And we were doing what we call plug and pray. You bring them in, you plug them in, you pray that they come on and work. And everybody was doing that. And as I got back, I realized there's a lot of people like me that's got these games. And we just play them once a year. Then they go back in storage. And we never play them again until next year. We try to play them again because we don't have the space for them. I mean, I have a game room that's a converted two-car garage in my house, and I also have a 3-car garage detached that has a quarter of that space is another man cave. So I had that full, I had the other one full, I had them in my living room, I had them in the kitchen. I had too many games. So and then they were in storage. So, and a lot of people were that way. So I put out there on our forum page, I put out there a post that said, let's do a co-op someplace. Let's everybody get your games. We'll bring them into one place. We'll all together go in on paying the rent and the things, and we'll get the electricity to run in. We'll pay the electricity. And everybody, we have one big, and we don't do just this once a year things. We always have this thing to go. Well, everybody like, oh, that's been tried. We did that. Somebody tried to do that. And everybody naysayed it except for one gentleman, Ken Graham. Ken replied back and said, I'd like to do that. I think we could probably do that. And we had talked before, and he had actually come to my house and we were putting the boards together in. So he came up, so we got to talking, and he agreed, yeah, we should be able to do that. And I said, okay. I said, all right, well, so let's start. Who else can we get? Well, the other gentleman that he said, well, I know a guy, Joe Reyna, and he's got 300 and something games all by himself, and he's in a warehouse. So, oh, cool. So we talked to Joe. We came in, and the three of us got together, and we started putting together for the original Game Preserve. It was in a 1,500 square foot warehouse where 300 square feet was on top of the office. It was an office warehouse. It had a load supporting roof, and it had an area up there that they sold. So that's where Joe was. So we said, okay, well, we'll put it in there. And as we started building it out and people saw we were a little more serious, another gentleman by the name of Joe Crookham, we have two Joes. Joe Crookham said, hey, I'd like to help. And he had a business on the side where he was making cabinets. He had a friend that had a CNC shop, and they were making cabinets, just exactly like that one. You could take your busted up Star Wars parts and stick it in this cabinet and it bolt in great. It's perfect. And he said, I think there's some synergy. Maybe I can build things and sell them there. So Crookham joined us, and we opened in, I think we actually opened in December 12, but our real opening was in January of 2013 is when we opened. And what we found, what we were hoping was to be a co-op. People would come in. So if we had 100 machines and you brought in 10 machines, you would pay 10%. Right? And then we would say, okay, well, everybody else, if you don't have a game, you can come in, but you're going to pay $10, and hopefully that'll offset our cost, and maybe, it won't cost us as much. Well, we found out nobody wanted to bring their games. They just want to come play ours. They just wanted an arcade. So it was like, all right, so after about 3 months, we kind of realized, okay, well, how are we going to do this if we got people, instead of just people coming in and playing things? And Ken Graham came up with the idea of, we should do this like a gym membership. People go to a gym, pay a monthly fee, and they get to use all the machines, and that business model seemed to work. So that's what we did. We started doing it. Now, we were doing it on spreadsheets, so there was no reoccurring. You come in, you pay, and I think it was $25. You come in, you pay $25, and you can play all month long. And that place was pretty cool because, like I said, we had a upstairs area, but the upstairs area was our workroom. Mm-hmm. So what we did was we put a winch, and we actually would winch these things up 14 foot in the air, and I've got pictures of a Xenon floating in the air 14 foot in the air as we winched it up and then slid it over into the work area where we could work it. It was kind of a neat place. But we were there for a year, and everything seemed to be going pretty good except for the fact that we weren't really making money, but we could see how we could make money. We could see how we could break even. We were putting in $200-300 every month, every one of us. Was, for the first year, we were all paying, there was $800 to $1,000 a month we would have to pay in. Well, that really wasn't going to work for us, but we knew we had a business model that would probably work. So we moved from there over to our second location, which was 4,500 square feet here in the Woodlands area. We searched around, we found this place, and it was an old church, and it was an office warehouse center, but they had converted a strip center, but they had converted a section of it to a church. You see church strip centers all the time, and which worked well because the sanctuary made a great arcade because they had extra air conditioning in it. Made a great arcade. They had a stage. They had a big projection screen in the back. They had a sound booth. So, and at the other place, all we had was just the games, right? So now we have things that added to our business model. Here we have the video screens and the music videos, and we have a snack bar now, and we have a party room where people can meet and have parties. All that came from that second location. It just added to our business model. So our business model developed over that. Just about the time we were starting to make a little money, made just a little bit of money, in the last 2 months of the year, November, December, 60 days before the end of the year, the landlord came to us and said, sorry, we're going to tear down the building, y'all got to move. And we went, oh crap. We just started making money, and it's like, oh, can't you wait just a little bit longer? Nope, you got to go. And sure enough, we moved out December 31st, January 3rd, the building was on the ground. It took them that long to go in there and trash it. So we moved out of that, and then we moved here. And we moved here, 6,500 square feet here. It was a lot more expensive for us in a much better location. So we went to a software called Easy Facility, which is what gyms use. So a lot of the gyms use that so it has membership tracking, but it also has a point of sale. You can swipe your takes credit cards, and it does reoccurring billing for us. So all of that is online. I don't deal, because that's one of the things as an IT, and I come from an oil field and a banking background, I don't want people's credit card information. I just don't want that. I don't want that responsibility. So this is all done outside. So somebody else does it. So we picked that up. We started running. 3 months here, we started making money. 6 months, we'd paid off all our debt. And by the end of the year, we were debt-free, running and making money by the things. And then in 2018 or 2019, before the pandemic, this location had $500,000 in revenue. And then in 2020, so we opened the NASA location in 2019. We got together in May of 2019. All the owners did, said, "Hey, let's do another." We ought to make another location. Had we known, right? We did. So we said, let's do another location. So we opened one in Webster, Texas, the NASA location. That location is 11,000 square feet. So bigger than this one, and it has a stage, and we have live music there, and we have and it's really decked out. You're all going to be amazed when you see that one. But we really went all out, spent a whole lot between us and the landowner there, the property owner. We spent over $250,000 getting that business up and running in that location, and then the pandemic hit. So we spent all our money and everything we'd saved. We spent it all getting NASA. Pandemic hit. And in 2020, we lost our corporate-wide. We lost over $160,000, and now we're $140,000 in debt to the government. So it's going to take us 3 years to get paid back and start over again. So we're really having to rebuild. So kind of the long story, but that's how we got there. But we all love it. One of the things that really made a difference for us, we picked up 2 other owners. When we moved here, Danny Caswell joined us, and when we opened the NASA location, we brought another gentleman in named Eric Stinson. And they're all pinheads, they're all collectors, right? And so we all have a passion for it. And that's something, when we opened NASA location, we wanted to make sure we duplicated the business model. The business model that works here, that includes memberships and party rooms and all this stuff, we had to do the video screens. We did the exact same thing over there. Even down to, like in this room where there's a work room, and we have a window. And we have a window into that work room as well, because people like looking in the window and see people working on stuff, right? So it was all those little things that we tried to duplicate, and it worked. It really worked well. And it's starting to come back now, luckily. But but everybody has a passion, And even though there's different levels of investment and different levels of ownership percentages, everybody, when it comes to making major decisions, everybody has the exact same voice. Everybody, there's no, just because you put in less money and you have 10% instead of me having 16%, everybody has the exact same voice. And anything over like $1,000 or $1,500, it takes everybody to make that decision, and that's pretty low money when you talk about the kind of money that we should be making. That's a pretty low delegation of authority at $1,000, but that has saved us more than it has hurt us, and we've made better decisions for it. So, good partners, good people. We are all Christian men, and this is all and those are guiding principles to help us, and it has definitely helped us. So, and that's how we did it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, love telling the story.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
No, not a problem. Glad to do it. Glad you guys came out. And like I said, if y'all go out next time, y'all go out to NASA, you're really going to be impressed with NASA. It's cool. We love it. It's a lot of fun.
Hello, I'm Sammy G from SoftwareAgentsHQ, and if you couldn't tell, I'm at the Game Preserve, repping the merch. This is the mural of all the different decades of gaming until you get to the beginning, which will be Pong. And we're at the Game Preserve, NASA.
For related content, check out these links over here. Or just stick around until the video stops playing.